Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending today, and also a special hello to our online audience who have joined via Teams. I trust you're all well, and before we begin today, I would just like to produce the following acknowledgement of country. In recognition of the deep history and culture of this island, we would like to acknowledge the Muwinina people, the traditional owners of the land upon which we gather. We acknowledge and pay our respects to all Tasmanian Aboriginal communities, all of whom have survived invasion and dispossession and continue to maintain their identity and culture. And of course, thank you to Libraries Tasmania for hosting us in this space today. And also just take note of the exhibition space because it's similarly relevant to things that we'll be touching on today. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicholas Hams, and I'm an archivist here with the National Archives Australia in the Tasmanian office. Alongside me is our NAA Tasmania State Manager, Bruce Kay. And today we are hoping to just ease you into the sometimes overwhelming subject of Australian military research. For the next short while, myself and Bruce will take you along with us through our NAA online catalogue, which we call RecordSearch. Throughout, we will make mention of particular resources and tricks in the hope of supporting your research. It's important when conducting any military research or historical research for that matter, efficiency is something that builds up over time. So it can be rather overwhelming at the start, but we hope that these little tricks that we're going to show you will assist. And if you also have any questions, Bruce and I are here to assist as well. So if you do have any questions, please save them till the end of the talk because we will conduct a Q&A session if suitable. What we will show you today is a basic understanding of our catalogue structure and alternative resources, which we hope will instill the confidence necessary to finally begin or even just continue on with your military research. Previous visitors through this room into our history room have expressed a wave of relief in locating relevant military records through our collection, giving credence to fables passed down through generations previous. Often, wartime experiences were not something a returned service person might share voluntarily, not even with their nearest and dearest. Understanding this, it is important to reiterate, as most of you may know, that we are not the standalone resource for Australian military research. We as National Archives employees are obliged to always keep the best interests of the Australian public in mind. We acknowledge the fact that we don't have all the records and all the answers for you. However, we are aware of the many other collecting institutions around the country who can help fill in the blanks and provide closure to the many questions you may have. We will make time to share with you some of the other collecting institutions you can use in concert with the National Archives, particularly the Australian War Memorial and the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. We are proud of the professional relationships we continue to build with other Commonwealth agencies and have since developed a thorough understanding of the resources available. Some of us even have first-hand experience utilising these resources, which Bruce will touch on later, looking into his uncle's service history. Along with taking you along through our records, we will draw your mind to the resilient, flame-resistant fibre which help prepare our service people for their time spent overseas. Our National Archives website is full of valuable resources if you know where to look. But rest assured, don't be discouraged if you feel yourself floundering through our website. We are here to help and will provide contact information at the end of the presentation. So we'll begin. So this is an item we found in our collection. This is a 2.5-year-old merino sheep with its prize ribbons. And to use this figure twice over, estimates have predicted that the coat would dress 2.5 service person. And then we see the photo on the right, just looking at the density of the coat. And here we have the transformation. The sheep jumping and looking far more agile than before, and similar to the young man who was standing aside it, which we thought was nice. And beginning with our online catalogue, this is our RecordSearch platform. If you don't have access to a computer at home, then you are welcome to drop by for a visit and use a PC terminal in our history room, which is behind me. A crash course in the Commonwealth Record series can be seen on screen. This explains the journey of records into our custody and how they came to be. What happens is, government organisations create agencies who then create series, or consignments is another word we use, of records, which are then catalogued into items. These items are what you see when you pick out a record on RecordSearch. No one expects you to fully understand this, as it can be complicated if unfamiliar. We only hope you get the general gist of our Commonwealth Record Series system. To help explain further, let's focus on an area which you obviously have a keen interest in, given you are all here today. Before we begin searching the catalogue, I feel as though some background information is crucial. Our main military record series are pictured here on the screen. Many of the records within these series have been identified, digitised and uploaded onto RecordSearch, allowing you to view digital copies of these records for no charge. However, it's important to note that Series B245A, second from the bottom, are the post-47 World War II dossiers. And also they include action from Vietnam, Korea and Malaya, and they do have to be requested through the Defence Archives Centre. So they're not actually held in our custody with the National Archives. And you can apply to the Defence Archives Centre if you are the individual who the record relates to, or if deceased, are their immediate next of kin. However, we can talk about that a little later. As a whole, these particular series on screen are what we would consider high use. Therefore, NAA received funding to prioritise making these records fully accessible as part of our Defend the Past and Protect the Future program. This enormous ongoing project ensures we align with a core value as an NAA employee, which is undertaking duties that are in the public interest. Due to the size of our collection and time restraints today, I will focus on one of the series above in order to demonstrate how we would use RecordSearch for further information. So here we are looking at series B2455, which is our first Australian Imperial Force dossiers. And you can see I have searched the series through the series parameter, and what we've brought up here is the series note. So something we as archivists use a lot is the series note. So it does give a really thorough, most of the time, if they're well described, a really thorough understanding of what a record in this series might actually entail. Because when you're looking at these service records, sometimes they can be hundreds of pages, and it can cost a lot of money to order 3 or 4 or more. So before deciding, of course, you can speak to us and we can give you an idea as NAA employees, but also the series note gives a lot of information and may help to steer you in the right direction. So we find that's very good for the public and for employees as well to use. And also, when looking for a particular individual, it's important to keep a few things in mind when using our advanced search function. So with our records on RecordSearch, particularly the service records, it isn't always just a name that is identifiable through your keyword searches. So it's always important to put, if you have the information, possibly a next of kin or a place of birth, or of course the service number does help as well, if you have that handy. But if you don't have this information, of course you can ask us and we can assist in researching for you. And here is a fact sheet that we have on our website, which is 136, which relates to Army service records. And we have printed out a bunch of them, which are on the table at the back if anyone feels like grabbing one afterwards, because it does explain the many series that we have relating to military records. And it is a good starting point for someone who is unfamiliar and just wanting to begin. So we have this fact sheet, and we do have another couple as well if anyone's interested. And these did used to be linked to our website, but they are tricky to find if you don't know where to look. So the best way of doing it is just to Google NAA fact sheets, and I think there's almost 200 there, looking at different events and different subjects across our whole collection. They are very good. And once again, we do use them as employees as well. And it does help us understand a researcher's query and get a better understanding. Another high-use military series amongst our collection is MT 1384/2. This series consists of bound volumes which identifies the recipients of war medals and badges. Often, researchers have come into the possession of an Australian war medal but are not aware of who is the recipient. This could be through an inheritance, or finding a medal in a second-hand store, or simply just wanting to confirm dates or names. These bound volumes may well help solve the puzzle. And then, of course, from there, as many of you would be aware, this clue can lead to more relevant records amongst our holdings. Now, these series are arranged on RecordSearch, and as mentioned before, they're all digitised, but it is very tedious to actually locate these recipient badges, as the terminology has changed throughout the wars for the names of the badges. But we do have another fact sheet at the back of the room which can help explain that further, and you're welcome to take a copy home and also ask us any questions you have about this. And another resource which we thought we would mention is our NAA YouTube channel. So we do have the fact sheets online, and we do have information on our website, but sometimes in this day and age as well, YouTube videos can help explain much easier and give a thorough understanding on a range of different topics. And this was done quite a few years ago now, but it's all still very relevant and can help in folds if you spend the time researching it. And that is the keyword I used just to locate that on YouTube, the World War I service records, and then our acronym NAA. Another invaluable record when you've found an individual you're interested in and you're wanting to look further into their history is our repatriation records. A YouTube video on our channel shown on the slide previous gives a detailed account of what may be revealed in a repatriation record. However, the key points are as follows. Often, there are a great number of pages in these records, and sometimes there are a number of records relating to the one individual. Feedback from previous researchers is that the repat records allow their historical research to go full circle. The records paint a portrait of the difficulties faced from service people trying to reintegrate into society upon returning from service. More often than not, they never reach full capacity again, displaying obvious signs of what we now know as PTSD. I'm sure you have all heard the term shell-shocked. This crops up often in our repat records. So the other resources I wanted to mention, which we do use and also you should use as being members of the public when looking at military research, is the Australian War Memorial. And there's a number of different sections of the website here, which will help you make sense of our records. And Bruce will touch on a few of them as well. And I will now pass over to Bruce to take you through the Australian War Memorial resources and the Commonwealth Royal Graves Commission.
Thanks, Nicholas. Apologies for the sound not working on the video. A few crucial bits of information missing there. But so what it went on to talk about was casualty cards as well as the attestation papers, which had 15 questions that the soldier answered. But the casualty cards, really, if you want to find out where and what happened to the soldier in the course of their service, it gives you a date and a place and an event. It's called a casualty card, but it also covers movements. So when they left Australia, when they arrived in England, when they went to the front, when they got wounded, when they went to the hospital. So it covers all those kinds of things, and it does have a lot of acronyms involved as well, like a GSW, which is a gunshot wound. So there's all those kinds of things that's on a service casualty card. Sorry, and so my personal experience with researching a soldier's service on a personal level was an approach to my cousin from the Army Unidentified Remains Unit, who discovered some remains in Belgium of a soldier, unknown soldier. And they have a unit that does a lot of family history research, as well as they take DNA and compare DNA. And so they did their family history and traced it back to my cousin, who provided the DNA, and as it turned out, it wasn't actually our relative, it was another unknown soldier. So that made me very curious about my relative Lionel Kay, who was killed in action in Belgium. So yeah, I found out a little bit from his service record that he enlisted in Sydney. He was born in Hobart, but moved to Sydney with his mother because his father passed away at quite a young age. But they moved to Sydney, and he enlisted there. And his occupation at this time was a tinsmith, and he was 5'11" and stout. So that reminds me of someone, probably an inch taller than me. But and he arrived in England in January 1917 after enlisting, and he proceeded to the front in France in 1917, where he received a gunshot wound to his cheek. And he spent some time, he got transferred to a hospital in England, where he spent some time recovering before returning to his unit in Belgium on the 25th of September. And he was then killed in action on the 5th of October. So not too long back in the thick of it before he was killed in action. And of course, this led me to ponder, well, what was happening when he was killed, which is something the service record, sometimes there is a little bit of correspondence on them, but it's quite short in scant details, really. And so a very good source for finding out what happened on that day is the Australian War Memorial and the unit diaries. So the casualty card will have a date the soldier was killed in action, and so you can then use that date to find the correct diary entry, which is fully digitised on the War Memorial. And yeah, it does. So it looks something like that on the and the good people have done a typed version as well. So if you have trouble reading, there is a typed version of the entries. So yeah, the other information you need to find the correct diary entry is the unit that the soldier belonged to, and that can be found on the service record, the National Archives service record. And of course, the majority of soldiers were in the infantry battalion. So in Lionel's case, it was the 38th Battalion. So yeah, having found the correct diary entry, it goes into details where the battle, it has what time events occurred, what time they started the battle, when barrages came through of shells. And it also lists, like, I think on the day Lionel died, there were 23 soldiers killed and X amount of officers and other ranks. So it is a very good source of piecing together some of the unknown facts that you naturally want to find out. So yeah, that's a very good source of information. And it can be quite tricky to find them on the War Memorial website. It's quite a number of clicks to locate the diaries. So it comes under the collection tab on the left-hand side there, and then that takes you to the official history. You then have to choose which war you're interested in searching, and then it breaks down into the different classes of units. So class 23 infantry, and then it takes you into subclasses. So you've got the various battalions, and then you then have to select the right infantry battalion. And yeah, so it's quite a few clicks to get to where you need to be, but it's definitely worth persevering with. The other resource that they have, the War Memorial, is the Roll of Honour. So that's a roll of all the soldiers that were killed in the First World War. DVA has a nominal roll for World War II, which you can search online, and that's on the DVA website. So yeah, the roll of honour is different than the roll of embarkation, which, yeah, the roll of embarkation is all the soldiers that went to war that left Australia on ships. So that's a bit of a point of difference between those two. And this is another way of finding out a bit more about the events of when the soldier was killed or wounded. So the Red Cross, they conducted investigations. It was initially the British Red Cross, but they also got help from other similar institutions from other countries to help in their investigations. So you can search. You can search this on the War Memorial by name. And so yeah, what they did was interview people that were in the same unit at the time, and they get witness statements confirming that the soldier was killed. So I'll just read you quickly just maybe one or two witness statements. So this was witness Morrison of D Company, 38th Battalion. I saw him killed instantly by a shell on October 4th on Springfield Farm Ridge near Polygon Wood. Just as we hopped over the top, I do not know if he was buried. I only knew him in the company. On October 8th, we were 7 miles out of Yerps and just going over when Kay got killed by a shell fire. Sergeant from D Company told me I was going over the top, that he had just seen him killed. It was not possible to bury him in a cemetery. He belonged to D Company, 18th Battalion. The ground was held. So, yeah, there's they do go into quite a few different accounts from different people. So yeah, it does give you a bit of a picture. So here's another one. I knew Kay well. He was a great cobber of mine. Just after we went over at Yerps on the 4th of October 1917, I saw a shell burst just near Kay, and he must have been killed immediately. Informant WA Chamberlain, private address Albion Park, Sydney Bureau. So yeah, that's another good area of research to fill in a few more blanks. And of course, the National Archives has a glossary of military-related abbreviations, but it is quite doesn't cover everything, whereas the War Memorial is very comprehensive and covers all wars, and yeah, that's searchable by an alphabetical glossary. That also comes in handy for interpreting casualty cards and yep, any other details on the service record. And yeah, the Commonwealth War Graves Commission is another source of information about service people. So they have their own website, which you can visit and conduct searches. Again, you can do it by name or service number. So there's a few facts and figures about the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. So yeah, the Commonwealth Government looks after the grave sites and cemeteries and maintains them. And yeah, as you can see, it's quite a large undertaking. Yep, so here's their search box, which you could just use first and last name. And but of course, with all these search boxes, the more details you have, the easier it is, and the less results you get. So yeah, we'll tell you where the soldier, which cemetery in Europe or England or any other place in the world, where the soldier is buried, and it'll give you a location in the cemetery, and it also you can download a certificate and which details their service and how they were killed. Oh, gone too far. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I have for other institutions and expanding your research beyond National Archives. So I'll hand back to Nicholas.
Thank you, Bruce. It's very good and very interesting to see someone who's been through it with the AWM, looking for an individual. Similar to the repat records, which we were speaking about before, I feel as though in order to gain a full picture of the life of a service person, it is important to draw from our surroundings in this space with the exhibition on hand to another essential element to a successful or unsuccessful, or in fact any military effort. That is the clothes on their backs. In keeping with the theme of our friends at Libraries Tasmania with their duck trousers, straw bonnets and bluey exhibition, we felt inspired to provide our own little narrative to complement Libraries Tasmanian's discoveries, which may be of interest to a Tasmanian audience. What we discovered was a story as follows, and a little history as well. So by the 19th century, wool-producing European nations were at capacity in terms of available pastoral land. The British looked to the Southern Hemisphere, particularly Australia, New Zealand and South Africa. In 1825, 250,000 acres in northwest Tasmania was allotted to 22 individuals associated with the British textile industry, forming the Van Diemen's Land Company. Given these fears were burgeoning even before the wars, you can imagine the necessity for material with clothing the magnitudes of service people. As a result, manufacturers had to adapt, coming up with resourceful and inventive ways to stretch the wool supply. One method used was taking used woolen cloth, rags and tailor scraps and shredding it back into fibre to be re-spun together with new wool. I'm sure that you have all used the term shoddy in your own lives. Well, the origins of this phrase is actually a textile term industry for this recycled wool fibre. It took on the meaning we use today when mixing too much shoddy with new wool often resulted in inferior quality articles of clothing. And here we have examples of successfully shoddied clothing on the left and the right, and what we presume is a young shearer in the making. And these were all found in our NAA collection. When preparing for presentations like the one today, we often draw on the experience and expertise of long-serving colleagues. Our NAA physical holdings exceed over 400 kilometres of records, not counting our born digital records. With digital preservation technology ever advancing, along with the medium of government records shifting towards a digital format, it is essential we understand what is in our custody at the present time. reaching out to colleagues and promoting discussion of our collection with our officers nationwide, we aim to share expertise and local experience. For example, our Tasmanian office used this collection awareness to develop the Chilled exhibition, which was NAA's most successful exhibition to date. Concerning today's presentation, a Queensland colleague informed us of a record discussing the clothing rationing of uniforms during World War II, which was an informative read, but reminded me of something I feel obliged to inform you of. This record was held in our Brisbane office. However, the record specifically relates to the Rationing Commission operating in Melbourne. Always remember that records have been and will continue to be moved between different offices. Don't always assume that an explicitly Tasmanian relevant record will be here in our repository. However, keep in mind we will be able to assist and provide current advice regarding any record in our collection, regardless of its location. And here we have an update on what our organisation has been up to over the last couple of years. And just for some further details, on average, and looking at military research, on average, NAA receives 10,000 requests each year to access World War II service records. So that's everything we have for you today, everyone. Thank you for attending, and thank you to our online audience and to Bruce as well for helping me with that. I will now pass over to Jasmine from Libraries Tasmania, who will give you some further information on the remaining talks for National Family History Month.
Thank you very much for your
No problem. Thank you, Jasmine.
valid and worthwhile and very interesting presentations. So to everyone who's still interested in our National Family History Month program, we do have a really exciting one this Friday. You might have heard about it on the ABC. It's a presentation by our community archivist, Jennifer Jerome, and she'll be talking about a commonplace book that was donated purposely, accidentally perhaps, but through our shoot for the lending items. So she'll be talking about that and what the commonplace book means in family history terms. And that's this Friday, the 16th. That will be here in this same gallery space. And then we've got some more going on right up until the end of August. So thank you very much, and we'll look forward to seeing you all then. Thanks.
So yeah, feel free to ask questions. Yep.
Just in case, I mean, most probably everybody will know this, but I had an ancestor who died in 1917 in France, great-grandfather, and I always thought, there was no grave, but I always thought, oh, how did he get his death records? Well, I applied to here, to the Registrar General Department, and they gave me a death certificate saying that he died in France, and I didn't know whether people knew that you could actually get a death certificate when they died in France, but of a record of his death.
Yeah, no, I wasn't aware of that.
I thought people didn't know, they might know.
Yep, thanks. Yeah, no, that's good to, yeah. Yes?
What sort of material, if any, does the National Archives have on servicemen pre-Federation, particularly with things like the Boer War and the volunteers who manned the batteries around Hobart, the coastal artillery?
Yeah, that's a bit of a crossover period, the Boer War. So we do have some records, but not a complete set. related to the Boer War, because that was the time that Federation came into being, and so the states had some of the records and the Commonwealth had some. There is a very good book, which I forget the name of, but that has a full list of Boer War soldiers. And pre-Federation, the State Library and Archive Service would be probably a source of information.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that would be more of a state thing, because it being pre-Federation, they're all their own governments.
Lieutenant Colonel Murray is the name you're looking for.
That's it, yeah.
It's a record of the contingents to the Boer War, I think, and so you need to be aware there's state-based contingents going to the war, and then post-1901, I think we've got about 600 or 700 personnel files for the Commonwealth contingents.
Okay.
So there's quite a lot of them are just missing in action.
Yep. Barry's our retired, semi-retired ex-NAA staff member, or continues to be. Yep. So
I think they're all digitised too, aren't they, Christina?
Oh, Christina's gone. Yeah. All the First World War ones are digitised, and the Second World ones are almost fully digitised, but there's a backlog with our technology in uploading them to the website. So that's a process that's going to happen over the next 6 months. So yeah, that means that you'll be able to search and find records from home, World War I, World War II.
Something that arose this morning, I think I was talking to Christina about this, that speaks to Bruce's comments about the service and casualty form, is that form, which reads like a diary and notes events like, somebody's gone to hospital and returned to the front, gone on holidays, had a bit of quiet time in a pox hospital or whatever it is full of abbreviations, and hence the need to decode it and write it as a narrative is helped if you go to the War Memorial website and really understand which war you're in, because the same abbreviation can mean a different thing in a different war. But the other thing to note is that the entries are not necessarily in chronological order, because they're made here in Australia by some clerk in the Department of Defence or wherever, probably in Melbourne in fact, from dockets coming from overseas. So they can arrive in a non-incident order. So it's worth, if you're going to write a narrative, to be really aware of which war you're in, which abbreviations apply, and just be a bit alert to the fact that the dates are not necessarily in incident order. So, there's many a trap for young players there.
The date of the incident, and there's a date it was recorded, so it does get a bit confusing when things don't match. Yes?
With injured personnel after World War One, is there a way of finding where they may have been recuperating, and further surgeries and convalescing?
Yeah, that would be the DVA repatriation files. So they usually had 3 files with DVA. I can't remember one was a medical file, one was a compensation file, and I just can't remember what the
service file, which enables establishes
eligibility. And they are held in our Sydney office, but you can request them to be digitised, but they are huge. Usually, they're huge files. So, and there is a cost involved here.
Thank you.
We have a question from one of the listeners. They're trying to work out the meaning of the various numbers on the World War I service record. for example, DO/100 or DO4/295 adjacent to the events?
Oh, okay.
Have you come across that?
I'm not 100% sure what that might be. Divisional officer possibly, but yeah, I'd recommend going to the glossary on the War Memorial and searching the Ds. That would be the first port of call for that one. And the War Memorial does have its own reference service, so you can ask them a question online, just fill in a form, contact details.
I've got a question, Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the answer to it. In Nicholas's slide, he talks about hundreds of thousands of this and that being digitised. What percentage of the collection is digitised now?
The National Archives collection,
Yeah.
not much. Well, considering how big it is, I don't know the exact.
10%.
I think it might be just 10%. Yeah,
Right.
so it's a very small. Yeah, but don't quote me on that. I don't know that off the top of my head. But I can find out and get back to you.
But it is a point worth making that there is an expectation in this day and age that if you want it, even if it's somewhere over the horizon, you can find it on the web. But 90% of it is actually obscure. And that's where people like Nicholas and I and Bruce are worthy of interrogation, because it's not always entirely clear where it is.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I was going to mention, and this only arose this morning, was a chap looking at a file of some 140 pages, so it was digitised, said that he'd been in and looked at a file last week and he'd spent 3 hours at it and he had to go home and have a bit of a nana nap. And this is a trap for the unwary. When you look at a digitised file, it has pages 1 to 140 or whatever, and you look at page number 1 and it's the front of the file, and then page number 2 is the top page of the file. And he hadn't realised that he needed to go to page 140 and come backwards to read the file in date order, because a file is physically, one page on top of another as they come in. And so it's a bit like reading a novel from the last page backwards. It would have been terribly confusing for him.
All right, so I've got one more question.
That wasn't my voice. This might have been answered before. I was a little bit late getting here, but is it okay to come and talk to you if you can't find me?
Absolutely, yeah. No, we're in the history room Wednesday to.
Just here somewhere?
Yep, just behind us here.
Oh,
so
okay.
Wednesday to Friday. 9:30 till 5. But yeah, if you can't get here on those days, then you can get in touch with us and make an appointment for Monday or Tuesday.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Can I ask about medals and badges?
Medals.
They mentioned that the soldiers receive their medals. Are they mentioned in the record search, in their files?
Yes. So if the video had worked, that would have shown you. And there is, I think there's a whole video about medals on YouTube. So it's usually towards the back of the service file, and they have a stamp. But just because the thing you have to remember is if the stamp is there and it has the letters NE in it, NE means not eligible. So I think they just went through and stamped all the files, but then some soldiers weren't eligible for that particular award. So, but yeah, there's usually a page in the file that relates to the awards they received, and may be recorded on the casualty card. I can't quite remember, but
I've got medals at home. I don't know who they belong to.
Oh, okay.
We've printed out the fact sheet for the medals, so you can take that along if you like, and if you're having trouble with it, you can always ask us as well. We've had a lot of requests last year for that, so we're across it.
And do please help yourself to things at the back. There's fact sheets and giveaways.
Did you have a fact sheet for the abbreviations? If you're not online, you haven't got a computer, have you got any sheets already printed out?
No, we don't. Sorry. Yeah. But
Somebody mentioned the Boer War records. Recently, I can't quite remember exactly where, but recently on somebody's file I saw something about service in India. Presumably, I don't know, I can't remember who it was, so it was most likely somebody from Britain. But the records in that war would be in the British National Archives, presumably.
Yep, that's a fair, that's what I'd assume, yep.
There's a very odd little set of files here where British soldiers who served in India retired into Tasmania and collected a pension here, and we've got some of the pension files. Not many.
How does it start, sorry? How early do you have them?
A couple of file searches, which is why that's still open.
My memory is they're in the 1920s and 30s possibly, so they're quite early, and it's not a comprehensive lot of records, I suspect.
Once that happened.
I can think of more.
It's a little missolved. But I do have it on.
That makes me think of Westbury. Westbury was a pensioner retirement town, I think, was it? Would there be any records about that? So be talking about
the establishment of Westbury, or about people?
Sorry?
About the establishment of Westbury, or are you talking about particular individuals?
No, well, the general establishment.
I imagine that would be in the state archives. Yeah.
Sorry?
I imagine that would be in the state archives because it's not a Commonwealth matter per se.
Lydia?
There would have been lots of women in the war too.
Yeah, lots of nurses, yeah, mostly in the...
And there was pilots too, women pilots and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So are they sort of incorporated in those files, or they've got their own different files?
They're incorporated in the files, but some of them had an F prefix on their service numbers, which is how you can identify. Yep. But if they were in the military, they're in the files. Yep.
So they're still in those files.
Yep.
And then they haven't disappeared
No.
Because it's easy to make things invisible. So do you have any records in there that's made certain things invisible?
Don't quite. What do you?
As in closed or?
Or anything like, because all through history people are doing more and more research and finding out about all these things which were never talked about, that were invisible.
No, we everything is registered as a series. It may not be item described, but everything in the collection is registered as a series and has a series note. So
the point that Lydia's making is a good one. The Archives Act, which is a product of the Wyndham years, but comes out during Fraser's time, has in it a particular phrase which refers to material which is exempt, so it's taken out. In other words, 90+%, probably quite a high 90% of it, relates to unreasonable disclosure of a person's affairs. When you think about that, it's a bit like the common law. It relies on a societal expectation. So when I worked in Melbourne access clearing World War I files, one of the things you were looking for were AGH numbers. So AGH in World War I was an Australian General Hospital, and some of the numbers denoted a pox hospital. So somewhere where troops from the front were taken back to England and treated for syphilis or gonorrhea, and that was regarded as an unreasonable disclosure of a person's affairs. Two things happened. One is there are no more surviving soldiers from World War I, but even prior to that, the expectation that you would have a bit of fun time with the girls in France and end up with, a disease was a matter of shame and reflected sometimes on wives, mothers, whatever. But then it got reinterpreted. Even in the time, I was working there, as rather being a matter of shame, it was sort of reinterpreted as, well, this was a really shocking war, and there was a totally different meaning attached to it. So now, no parts of World War I personnel dossiers are exempt, in large part because it can't be an unreasonable disclosure of a person's affairs because they're not alive.
And also too, because of all the syphilis and gonorrhea and all that, when the soldiers came, they had a lot of babies. So that babies were born, they couldn't see, they couldn't hear, they came all disabled, severely. So what happened to all those children? I mean,
that might be. That sounds like a whole other talk to have.
You're heading into uncharted waters.
But yep, thank you all for coming. Might put a.
Thank you.
Yes, before we go off in any other directions. Yep, we'll. Come in and see us if you need any assistance at any time. All right, thank you.